If you want peace, prepare for war. Christopher Nolan's film Oppenheimer screams this 2,000-year-old saying at the top of its lungs. Oppenheimer is Nolan's 13th film, and it's about the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. If you're anything like me, then you were probably sitting in the film trying to pick out the meaning of why half the film was in black and white and half the film was in color. Luckily, I've taken the time to analyze the film and its color-changing components. My name's Dominic Matigian, and prepare for nuclear war. At the beginning of the film, we meet J. Robert Oppenheimer as he sits in his hearing for a security clearance renewal. In the bottom left of the screen, we see the title, Fission. So far, we are off to a hot Christopher Nolan start. What does that mean? Well, let's start with this. What is fission? Fission is dividing or separating something into different parts. This concept is particularly important to the film for two reasons. Number one, the bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima were fission bombs. And number two, fission is used to describe the parts of Oppenheimer's life where everything is falling apart. These scenes are displayed in color because it's based in reality. A bit later, we are first introduced to Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Strauss, as he sits through his own trial of sorts. President Eisenhower picked Strauss to be on his cabinet, but before that was official, Strauss had to be confirmed by the US Senate. When we're introduced to this scene, the film switches to black and white, and we see a label in the bottom left, to Fusion. Once again, we are left by Nolan to scratch our heads and wonder, what the hell does that mean? Well, fusion is a process of forming two or more things to make one thing. The best example of a fusion reaction is our sun. The hydrogen atoms fuse together under immense pressure, creating insane amounts of energy, enough to keep us alive and this rock that we call Earth spinning. Strauss spends the entire film coaxing several people into putting immense pressure on Oppenheimer, forming a story presented with true facts to paint a false picture and blow up Oppenheimer's credibility. Eventually, Strauss' story fuses together. But what led to Strauss going on a warpath to tear down Oppenheimer's credibility and his career? Strauss had a long list of reasons why he did not like J. Robert Oppenheimer in real life. The film doesn't cover nearly all the reasons, but the main three reasons are: number one, that Oppenheimer and Strauss had very different political views. Oppenheimer strongly opposed the US hydrogen bomb development program, and he had communist affiliations during the time of McCarthyism. After the war, the Soviet Union inexplicably successfully tested a plutonium fission bomb, and Strauss thought Oppenheimer was the one to blame. Number two, Oppenheimer embarrassed Strauss at a public hearing about the export of radioisotopes. Strauss never forgot this and was determined to destroy Oppenheimer's career because of it. Finally, Strauss was incredibly self-centered in the film. He thought Oppenheimer was responsible for destroying his relationship with Albert Einstein. Throughout the film, Strauss referred to the meeting of Oppenheimer and Einstein at the pond on the Princeton campus, which we see earlier in the movie. He insisted Oppenheimer said something to Einstein that made him and the entire physics community hate Strauss. This obviously was not true. Strauss was hated by many in the community for many reasons, and one of those reasons is because of what he did to Oppenheimer. What Oppenheimer really said to Einstein by the pond was a reference to their conversation before the completion of the bomb, where Oppenheimer expressed his and the other physicists' concerns that by detonating the bomb, there was a possibility the explosion would set off a chain reaction in the atmosphere that would burn the planet to a crisp, killing all of its inhabitants. Strauss viewed Oppenheimer as a roadblock to his growth within the government. So he used his power, influence, and knowledge of loopholes in the government to play a rigged chess match that destroyed Oppenheimer's standing. What it came down to was a power struggle. But why? The public viewed Oppenheimer as a prophet, meaning whatever he said was assumed to be true because of this perceived superior intellect as a god amongst men. This really hurt Strauss' image because if he thought one thing and Oppenheimer thought differently, Oppenheimer would win the argument. So Strauss had to get rid of him. But how did he do it? Strauss used a number of illegal tactics to put an end to Oppenheimer's career. His plan was to convince people that he and Oppenheimer were really good friends. Meanwhile, behind the bureaucratic curtain, Strauss gave Oppenheimer's lengthy FBI record to a man named William Borden in the early 1950s. Borden was a pilot during World War II and a staunch anti-communist. So why did he choose to go this route? Strauss knew it would have been a highly publicized event if they were to put Oppenheimer on trial before the Senate, and public appearance was Oppenheimer's arena. He was really good at swaying public opinion and was smart enough to outwit Strauss and anybody else in that arena. Instead, he decided to go for Oppenheimer's security clearance, barring him from doing any further work for the government and essentially taking away his influence. With the help of a few members of the government, he put Oppenheimer in a small, inconsequential meeting room with no cameras, no reporters, and no hype. The hearing acted as a trial, but due to several loopholes, the advantage was heavily stacked against Oppenheimer. Unfortunately, his lawyer couldn't really do much because it wasn't an official trial, so several rules were thrown right out the window. Once Borden finished his complaint against Oppenheimer's security clearance renewal, he submitted it to the proper authorities. This is where it all came together for Strauss and disintegrated for Oppenheimer. In a scene at Strauss' mansion on the Princeton campus, Oppenheimer is handed the formal complaint by Kenneth Nichols, the civil engineer that worked on the Manhattan Project. This scene plays twice, once in black and white, and once again in color. One of only a few scenes to do so. It was at this point Strauss dealt the coup de grace. Fission had finally become fusion. In a flashback after the Senate did not confirm Strauss to serve on the president's cabinet, thanks to testimony by physicist David Hill, Strauss expresses his concern once more that Oppenheimer turned Einstein against him in their meeting by the Princeton pond. In reality, they were having their own moment of concern, thinking they were about to bring on the end of the world, as we discussed earlier. But there was another piece to that conversation. Einstein warned Oppenheimer about what was to come in the future. Einstein told Oppenheimer they used him for his mind to get what they wanted. After his peak, they would come after him to destroy his credibility. He warned that anyone who seemed to be acting as a friend to Oppenheimer would only be doing what they needed to act in their own best interest. This was seen in the interaction between Oppenheimer and Edward Teller, another one of the physicists that worked on the Manhattan Project. It was originally Teller that proposed the idea there could be a chain reaction that was set off once the bomb was detonated, burning up the entire atmosphere. While working on the Manhattan Project, Teller wanted to develop the hydrogen bomb, but he was ultimately shut down. He left the project as a result. Later, Teller fully supported the government in creating a program to develop the H-bomb. Oppenheimer thought this would be unnecessary and morally opposed the creation of a larger bomb. He simply did not believe it was needed. Teller ultimately helped to get Oppenheimer out of the way by testifying against his security clearance renewal to realize his vision. Oppenheimer's work to create the bombs that caused a chain reaction on the atomic level ended up creating a chain reaction, ushering us into a new era of modern history.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.